Hello and a very warm welcome to this special edition of Middle East Matters. This week we're devoting the entire programme to elections scheduled to take place in Israel on September the 17th. Voters will be taken to the ballot boxes for the second time in just 1 year after no clear winner was declared in the last round. Now, this month's poll pits the party of the incumbent Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's mired in corruption scandals, against that of Benny Gantz, who appeared out of nowhere just months before the country's first vote back in April. And throughout the show, I'll be joined by Gideon Rahat, who's a professor in the Department of Political Science at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He's also a senior fellow at the Israel Democracy Institute. Professor, thanks very much for being with us.
You're most welcome.
But first, a breakdown of the electoral system in Israel with France 24's Ellen Gainsford.
It's a political balancing act that all Israeli parties have to take part in. To form a government, they need to win 61 seats. But since the first elections took place in the country in 1948, no one party has secured a majority. After the votes are counted, the party with the most seats can negotiate with other groups to try and form a government. They have 42 days to build a viable coalition. That's why, in the Knesset, small parties are often kingmakers. In the upcoming election, two parties are again neck and neck. Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud, on the right of the political spectrum, and Benny Gantz's centrist Blue and White party. This time, if it's another hung parliament, it could be far-right Avigdor Lieberman, who's one of the kingmakers. Benjamin Netanyahu's former ally scuppered the formation of a government last April. In exchange for his political backing, he's demanding a law that ends the military service exemption for young, ultra-Orthodox Jews. The measure, which divides Israelis, will now be at the heart of the upcoming elections.
Now, more than ever, one of the top concerns for voters in Israel is security. And the big question is, will the current escalation in regional tensions play into Benjamin Netanyahu's hands? Professor, what's your assessment here?
Well, Netanyahu is seen as a strong leader in terms of security, but you have to remember that in Blue and White, the party that compete with him neck to neck, we have three former chiefs of staff. So I think that in this sense, security does not give him a huge leverage, and especially there is a lot of criticism about the way that he is holding on to some kind of a balance with the Hamas in Gaza. Some people expect him to be more tough on the Hamas. Some people even claim that he has an interest in keeping a weak Hamas government in Gaza.
OK, Professor, let's now take a look together at a report on that security issue by France 24's Emerald Maxwell.
Sending drones into Lebanon and exchanging fire with Hezbollah or Syria, tensions between Israel and Iran's allies have increased in recent weeks. Hoping to secure a more comfortable majority in a second general election in 5 months, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been using the security threats to his advantage, presenting himself as the best defender of the Jewish state against the Iranian enemy.
We need to prevent Iran from supplying our enemies and its proxies, such as Hezbollah and others, with precision weapons that endanger us. We also need to prevent Iran and its proxies from entrenching on our borders. We are determined to maintain the security of Israel.
Netanyahu is looking to shore up his right-wing base. In conservative Jerusalem, the approach seems to be working.
If we're dead, then we really don't have anything to talk about. So I think the number one thing is security. That's the most important thing in this election. I agree with Netanyahu on this.
People are running to bomb shelters every day. It's not just what you hear on the news. He could be using it for the election, but he's also got a point to prove. He's doing things his way. Let's see if the country like what he's doing or want something else.
Some of Netanyahu's rivals describe his politicization of tensions for electoral purposes as dangerous. Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid of the Blue and White Centrist Alliance say the Prime Minister discloses too much military information, which could put Israeli citizens at risk.
Traditionally, the IDF's communication style in the event of an operation against the declared enemy of the Jewish state is neither to confirm nor to deny, so as to keep a sort of strategic ambiguity. And it's precisely this strategic ambiguity that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is challenging, according to his political opponents.
Netanyahu is hoping to be re-elected for a record fifth time. This despite his legal troubles. Israel's Attorney General has said he intends to indict Netanyahu on charges of fraud, bribery and breach of trust, pending a hearing expected early October.
Professor Rahat, moving on from the subject of security, how important is the Arab vote in Israel? Because, of course, some observers have said that Netanyahu has previously tried to suppress this.
Well, the Arab vote is important because the more Arabs come to vote, the higher the turnout. It moves the system to the right. So it moves the system to the left, sorry. So what we see is that the more Arabs will vote, the middle of the spectrum, the 60 and the 61 seats, might be held by a different party. So the right wing is interested in low Arab turnout, while for the center left and left, the more Arabs will take part in the elections, the more seats the joint list of the Arab and communist parties will have, the more chances they will have to establish the next government.
And I'd like to now talk about those that have historically actually supported Likud. Some of them are now saying that this time around the party's leadership is a major issue for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are forces in what we call the liberal right, the more democratic right, that are not very happy with Netanyahu. They used to be his allies. They used to support him when he was part of what they saw as the liberal right. Now Netanyahu has become more of a populist right, less respect and even a lot of confrontation, a lot of criticism from him, even attacks at the judicial branch, at the media, at what he called the old elites. And these people from the right, from the liberal right, are not happy with Netanyahu anymore.
So you just mentioned, of course, these former allies aren't happy with him. What are Netanyahu's chances here, in your opinion?
He has a very good chance to win still, as long as he wins the 60 and the 61st seat in the Knesset. It's not only his party, it's his close allies, the religious parties, from the national religious to the ultra-Orthodox parties. If this coalition of Likud and religious will win 61 seats, he will have it quite easily. He will have it his way. However, his problem is that opinion polls, at least, shows that the middle is not in his hand. The 60 and 61st seats are in the hands of Avigdor Lieberman. And Avigdor Lieberman was almost a natural part of this coalition. But now he kind of divorced it in the name of secularism. He's still very right-wing, but he's for secularism, while all of the other coalition partners are religious parties.
You just mentioned Lieberman, and he may actually prove to be the kingmaker in next week's vote.
If opinion polls are right, he is the kingmaker. He holds the middle. He can turn to the right. He can turn to the left. And what he claims that he's going to do is to bring both Likud and Blue and White together into what we call a unity government.
Lastly, Professor, what is Benny Gantz's strategy here? Because we still don't really know where he stands on an array of issues.
Well, Benny Gantz's strategy these days is about secularism. He's trying to propose vis-à-vis Netanyahu's coalition. He tried to propose another vision, a more secular vision, a more liberal democratic vision to the state of Israel vis-à-vis Netanyahu populism or majoritarian democracy.
Going back to something that we discussed earlier, even if Netanyahu is re-elected and formally indicted, is it not true that he may not have to step down from office?
According to the law, the formal law, he can stay until he is until the end of his trial. However, there is the formal law, and there is also decisions that were made by the Supreme Court and other things. And according to some of the claims, he will have to step down if he will be indicted. So these are all claims. In the past, that's what happened. We already had a prime minister that resigned and went to jail, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. We already had a president that went to jail. A few ministers spent time in jail for corruption. However, Netanyahu is the first one who tried to use his public support in order to save himself from the court system.
On that note, Professor Gideon Rahat, thank you very much for speaking to us here on Middle East Matters. And of course, thank you, as always, for watching our programme on France 24. Do stay tuned.